You're listening to Uncle Josh's True Scary Stories.
About 13 years ago, I lived in an old terrace house in Highgate, Perth, across from Hyde Park. I loved it, and so did my son, who was little at the time. Odd things used to happen, like lamps would go out, and I would say, "Can you turn it back on, please?" And you guessed it, it would come back on. This happened lots of times, and we were used to it, and we actually thought it was quite sweet, like the house was alive. It never felt scary. Then, after about a year being there, stranger things started to occur. At one stage, all the pictures in the house would fall off the walls for no reason at all, and this lasted for about a week. I was telling a friend about it who was over during that week, and he was looking at me very skeptically, and I laughed and was about to try to convince him when the painting above us, which was behind the couch, fell off the wall on top of us. Luckily, it was an unframed canvas. One night when I was home alone, I went to go down the hallway to bed, and there was a wetness down the middle of the hall carpet that led to my bedroom. No one else had been in the house all day, and no water had been anywhere near the hall. I called my parents, who told me to look under the carpet as it might be rising damp. Even though it was summer, I checked. The floor below was totally dry. The next morning when I woke, the light pink couch in the lounge room had a huge round wet patch on it. I had been there myself all night, and I had not weed on the couch. The seat cushion was soaked through, with no visible explanation available at all. The next night I asked a girlfriend to stay, as I was getting a bit nervous, and the novelty of it all was wearing off. She agreed, we had dinner and chatted, and then prepared for bed. I asked her to push the bolt up on the back door while I brushed my teeth, and she called out to me that it was jammed and wouldn't move. When I went out there, she was looking a bit odd. I pushed the bolt, and it went right into place effortlessly. She then said she was really sorry, but she had to go home. I thought she must be joking, but she wasn't. She mumbled excuses as she made her way to the door. Virtually running to her car, she called back to me and said, "You'll be fine, I promise." I was shocked. She was not normally that weird, and I found out eventually that when she went to bolt the door, the bolt would just not budge no matter how much force she used. And she felt a painful ringing in her ears and sensed that someone was telling her to get out. She claimed that the feeling was so terrifying, she knew she had to leave. But she also claimed that she felt the ghost, spirit, energy, whatever it was being protective of me, and that I would be fine. The most dramatic thing that happened in the house, thankfully, occurred during the daytime. My partner and I were unpacking the shopping one fine Saturday afternoon and chatting while my son played, and there was a nice mood in the house. Then I realized I could hear the TV being turned on and off over and over, so I called out for my son to stop playing with it. He called back, "Mom, it's not me." The room was open plan, so I looked over into the lounge, and sure enough, my son was playing with his Game Boy. My partner had just started to explain that it was most likely an electrical fault, when the toaster behind us started popping up repeatedly, as in the toaster spring. He was just about to restate his faulty wiring theory when we both noticed that the toaster wasn't plugged in. As we stared at each other in amazement, the fridge started to literally shake from side to side, banging very loudly as it hit the ground each time. Then immediately when that stopped, the fly-wire door leading outside opened and slammed shut right before our eyes. We all just looked at each other in astonishment until my son said, "Cool." That made us all laugh about it. I guess that sounds odd, but it wasn't scary, just amazing. A friend who was worried about me living there took me to see a psychic, and I mentioned nothing to him about why I was there. And the first thing he said to me was, "You've got a spirit living in your house that's very active, and he has his eye on you." Naturally, that didn't impress me at all, but it freaked me out, and I thought of my ghost as being female. Somehow that was less scary. He also told me that the ghost was very jealous of anyone close to me, and said that he watched me getting undressed every night. At that point, I stopped the reading. I thought that was an off thing to tell me, even if it was true. When I moved into a new house, 2 other friends came to tell me about experiences that they had felt in my old place, but had never wanted to scare me by telling me while I was still living there. Both stories were told to me by 2 people who didn't know each other, and what happened to them had happened at separate times, so there was no collusion. They told me that they had felt a painful ringing in their ears and felt very frightened. They felt like something definitely wanted them out of the house, and both said the ringing didn't stop until they were quite some distance from my home. Another friend confided in me that she had clearly heard a voice saying, "Get out." When she looked around, no one was there, and I was still outside hanging out the wash. I moved out of that house a long time ago, and I've had many more fascinating things happen, but none as visually dramatic as the TV toaster fridge thing. I just think of it all as being a natural occurrence. I believe in parallel levels of existence, and that people move on, not die. Just sometimes people choose not to move on completely, and some of them apparently still have a few issues. This story is hard to explain, but nevertheless true. I live in Australia on a farm, and I'm 18 now, but this story happened about 2 years ago when I was 16. A friend had come over to my place, but left, and I was all alone, and it was just me and my 2 dogs, going on around 5 or 5:30. I was just chilling, watching TV and playing games, but I got super bored like I always do after playing them for a couple of hours. My parents were out. My younger brother was at a friend's place, and my nan, who lives next to us in a little granny flat, she was out too, getting her hair cut. There aren't too many places good close to where I live, so you have to walk quite some distance before going on a half-decent walking track that you would actually be able to enjoy. Stupid me, I thought, well, I'm bored. I went for a walk, only before it got dark in about 2 hours. Skip ahead like a half hour of walking. I finally hit a trail that I like to walk to clear my head, and it was a trail that has 2 ways to go, one to a river that has a few large rocks you can sit on and just watch the river flow, and another way which leads to another spot on the river. I went down the first track and sat on these rocks looking at my iPhone while watching the river as well. I was there for maybe 10 or 20 minutes, and then I decided to head back. As I was going back up the track, I saw a bag on the ground, and I was super curious because that wasn't there when I went down. Anyway, I went over to it to check it out, and I heard something behind me, like something was coming from behind, and I gotta admit, I freaked out and started running as hard as I could, and I'm actually quite fit, so I can sprint quite some distance. I finally reached the start of the track, and I noticed it was getting darker and darker. And that's when I checked my phone and realized I only had half an hour to go before I got home, before I knew I would be in trouble. I know this area very well, so I know all the shortcuts. And while I was at the start of the trail, just catching my breath, I looked behind me, and this man, a little shorter than me and quite tubbier, came up behind me, and he said that he would give me money and a new iPhone if I came with him. I replied, "I'm good, thanks, maybe another time." But he said, "Come on, it's all for free." Before I could talk again, he said, "Hey, what's a good-looking fella like you doing out here by yourself?" And I just said, "Going for a walk?" He reached into his bag and pulled out what looked like something you would hold a stray dog down so you could detain them, and I freaked the fuck out and ran harder than I ever had before. I could hear him chasing me, saying, "Wait, wait!" And I said, "Fuck off, you creep." I finally got home and it was super dark. I actually had to use my phone's torch to make it the rest of the way home, and when I went inside, I told my dad everything, and he said, "You're okay. You're probably imagining things." And then he told me to go to my room and calm down. And hey, you should have been home a half hour ago. So I went to my room and slept the rest of the night. I've always been the first one to wake up in the morning, and I like to go outside and take a piss in the paddock while taking a look around, even though it gets super cold. I didn't mind because I was kind of used to that. So I got to the front gate, and the lock, which is usually on, was snapped off. I ran back to the house and told my dad, and he grabbed his shotgun, and we went around the property looking for things, but we found nothing, and he said, "Yeah, that is kind of strange, but it could be some of the teenagers around just being dicks." As we headed back to the house, I said to him, "Hey, look, over there in the bush, beside the gate." The man that I saw the day before was hiding there, and he was there the entire time, especially when I was at the gate, and he could have grabbed me. My parents would never have known. Dad ran towards the front gate with the gun, but by then the guy had jumped into his car and driven off. So Dad took a potshot at the car and took out its back window. We called the police and told them everything, and Dad asked if he was going to be in trouble. The policeman said no worries, as it was classed as self-defense and a breach of property protection. But what creeps me out is the police had found a dog tranquilizer syringe right where this guy had been standing in the bushes. They caught this guy a year later due to an investigation, but it scares me if he had got any kids and what he had done to them. P.S. I have a knife now to protect me.